Going on YouTube? Northeast Ohio here. Hey guys, just real quick before we get into today's video, because of course I forgot. YouTube nonsense down below. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button. You guys have done fantastic lately. I am almost to 900 subscribers. We are really close to the 900. And let's get to that big 1,000 number. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, and judging by my analytics, 60% of you are not, click the subscribe button if you like what I'm doing here. Just shows that you guys like what I'm doing and encourages me to keep making content. So click the sub button. Let's get this channel up to 1,000 as quickly as possible. That would be insane. Absolutely insane. But let's do it. If you're not subscribed, click the button. All right, let's get into our topics today. Gonna go over kind of continuing the trend of this is a slash market update slash off-season project type video. We've been doing the NBA off-season targets for guys to buy and grade, etc., from the non-playoff teams and whatnot. And I have at least one, probably two more videos coming in that series of guys I want to talk about. But I was on some Facebook groups today and just my own personal experiences the last 2 weeks or so. I've gotten a couple recent SGC orders back. As you're aware, I did some reveal videos on the channel. And I've been trying to sell them. And if you guys have never graded with SGC before, their slabs are a little trickier to value because there's not a lot of comps on them in general, depending on the card. And they pull a lot less value than a PSA 10 does. And I am specifically speaking to ultra modern NBA. So anything basically 2016, 2017 and newer. Specifically talking about that. In older stuff, SGC does perform better compared to PSA, but in ultra modern stuff, it just does not. For whatever reason, the ultra modern hobby community is not accepting of them as a slab yet. And maybe that changes, but right now it is not there. You could spin it however you want. The data is not there to back it up. And I try to base my decisions on data. So I'm just looking at the numbers and I'm going with what I'm seeing. And there's no denying that. So what I wanted to talk about today is not selling SGC slabs, but buying SGC slabs as an off-season target. So as everyone's aware, the market in general is in a cooling off period. I'm not speaking about any specific cards. Just in general, the market is trending downward a little bit lately, especially in basketball. Season's winding down, social justice. There's a ton of different things going on. It was overinflated to begin with, whatever. But in general, the market has cooled about 20 to 30 to 40%, depending on the card, since early August. Early August, late July is kind of when the market peaked basically across the board. And it's been downtrending since then and starting to level off now. So once again, I was in a couple groups today, a couple different discussions, talking to Natsman and Stepback, who has a YouTube channel and a podcast today as well, about some stuff. And I was curious because I haven't looked for a while on how SGC was doing on some of the bigger modern cards. Some of the stuff that I've done is obviously modern, but it's like Mosaic LeBron. It's kind of niche. There's not a lot of them out there. So I dove in today and looked at 3 of the more popular cards in ultra modern basketball, and that also have good, or at least decent numbers of sales data for SGC. Because that's one of the problems is there's not a lot of SGC slabs still in a lot of these cards. They're starting to hit the market. So I looked at Zion, his 2019 Prism base, Ja, 2019 Prism base, and Trae Young, 2018 Prism base, all just their base rookie cards. I glanced at Luka. I wanted to use Luka too, but unfortunately, there's just not enough sales data to draw a trend line. There's only been one recent Luka base Prism SGC 10 sale, and it was just a couple days ago. And it lines up with what I'm seeing in Zion and Trae. But prior to that, there hadn't been a sale since late August, and too much has changed in that 2 weeks. So I didn't want to use that as an example because I didn't feel that one data point was enough to draw a conclusion from. So that's why Luke is not on here too. So what we're going to see is that SGC values, and I'm specifically talking SGC 10 values, have taken a bigger hit than some of the other stuff. Not like huge, but and you'll see when we get into the data here. Typically, the way that it worked before was it went PSA 10, then there was a pretty decent drop to SGC 10, then there was a slight drop to BGS 9.5, and then PSA 9, SGC 9.5, Raw, and BGS 9 were all close to each other, give or take, a few percentage points either way, depending on the card. But in general, once you got below BGS 9.5, they kind of all clumped together. So the three key cards we're going to look at today are PSA 10, SGC 10, and BGS 9.5, as those are the quote unquote top grades in each of the cards. Now, obviously, SGC has a gold label, and BGS has a BGS 10 and a BGS black label. But SGC Gold, BGS Black, and BGS 10 are just not common enough grades to really use in a real world experience. They're just not handed out enough. So what we're going to see here is there is tremendous value in buying SGC slabs. And then, in my opinion, you could do one of two things with them. You can hold them or crack them and send them to PSA. That's slightly riskier, but the return could be huge. Because two things are going to happen. Odds are, especially the three cards that we're going to talk about, but you could probably apply this across the board, but specifically the three cards we're going to talk about are, as long as the market is relatively normal, are cards that are going to go up naturally before next season starts. And I'm specifically talking before next season starts. I'm skeptical on Zion. I don't know what happens once he starts playing again. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. But regardless of what you think about him, the natural conclusion is prices are going to go up before next season starts. So by buying an SGC 10, cracking it, subbing it to PSA in hopes of getting a 10, you can really gain a lot because you gain on the value difference of an SGC 10 to a PSA 10. And you'd also gain on the card just naturally going up in value while it is sitting at PSA in anticipation of the upcoming season starting. So let's get into some actual numbers. So the first chart that we have on the screen is Zion's base prism, like we discussed. And this is a 30-day chart. I just kind of picked that semi-random because it goes back to relatively when the market peaked, give or take. Zion peaked sooner than this, but you get the gist. So the pink line is PSA, the yellow line is SGC, and the dark blue line is BGS 9.5. So SGC prices fluctuate a little bit more than the others because there's not as many of them on the market. So their sales vary a little bit. So that's why you see BGS and PSA's line relatively in sync. It's relatively a straighter line. It doesn't have the wild jumps like the SGC line does. But what you see down here at the end of this SGC line is, for the first time, an SGC 10 price dipped below a BGS 9.5 price. And maybe you just can't get the next one up below BGS 9.5, but it's close enough that they're basically going to be valued the same. So if we come down here and look at the actual charts, not the line graphs, you could see this is the ending average. A PSA 10 Zion base prism ended this 30-day period at about $580. SGC 10, $321, and a BGS 9.5 at $375. That's a pretty big difference between an SGC 10 and a PSA 10. It's not quite 50%, but it's damn close. And what you're going to see is this trend's going to continue forward. SGC 10s are going for about half of what a PSA 10 is. And like I said, this is loosey goosey math a little bit, because SGC prices do fluctuate a little bit more. But there's enough data there that it's basically sitting at around that point, as we see on the other two cards. So, what I'm thinking for an off-season project that wouldn't be bad if you wanted to invest in a little bit higher end cards, you could target these SGC 10 Zions. Say you get them for 350. Let's say the market just stays exactly as it is for the next month or two, until we get a firm date on when next season starts. And let's say next season starting in January. So you have the rest of September, you have October, and you have most of November, where the market is probably going to stay relatively flat. Then the hype begins to build up, come early December, maybe Thanksgiving, late November, whatever. And then the prices start to rise. And they may start doing that even before that. So you can get into these Zion Prisms for say 350. You get it, okay? Get it now, crack it, send it to PSA. $20 a card on an economy order. You should get it back, since we don't really know when the season's going to start. Let's say you get it back in early January, either right before the season starts or right as the season starts. And once again, we're kind of playing with loose numbers here. And let's say you could pull the 10. It crosses over to a PSA 10. All right. Even if nothing changed, you spent say 350 on the slab, $20 to grade it. That's 370. $20 to ship it. That's 390. Plus, if you're including other cards in there, that negates some of that cost. You get it back in a PSA 10, and let's say PSA 10s are $600. And then you sell it for 600. Even if you factor in 10% eBay fees, that takes it down to 540. You're still up, almost $150 a card, give or take, if not a little bit more, actually, assuming you pull the 10. Now, people can say what they will about SGC, but I do feel like they grade relatively tough. I don't know that they're as tough as BGS or PSA. Everyone can post different examples of different cards that each one of the three companies gave a 10 to, and people will laugh and say, look at how off-centered this is, or this big chip that they marked, whatever. I'm not going to play that game. I could find examples from all three companies of cards that were overgraded or undergraded. So we're not even going to go there. But in general, SGC 10s seem to be like high quality cards. So I think and I don't have numbers to back this up, I'm speculating. I think the crossover percentage, if you crack it, would be pretty good. The reason I say if you crack it is PSA tends to be harder on crossovers sent in a slab. And I'm going based off BGS for this. There's plenty of data out there of people submitting BGS True Gems, which are quad 9.5s, trying to get PSA 10s. And they come back as PSA 9s or not enough to meet their min grade of a PSA 10. I think the rate on slabbed BGS True Gems crossing over to PSA 10 is around 50%. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the number I've seen floating around quite a bit. So if you're going to do this, I would recommend cracking it. That adds a little bit more risk because maybe it comes back a PSA 9. But if you do these in multiples, I think odds are you're going to come out ahead. If you just do one, it's a little riskier. But if you do, say, 10, you only need to hit on about 6 or 7 out of 10 to come out way ahead. And also considering that, once again, I believe these cards are going to go up in value as we get closer to the season starting. So let's look at Trae Young. Same thing, same graph. Pink is PSA 10, blue is BGS 9.5, yellow is SGC 10. Now, there's not a ton of sales in these in SGC 10s, but you can see it basically hovers right at the BGS 9.5 mark. There hasn't been a sale of an SGC 10 in a few days, but you can see it's basically neck and neck with a BGS 9.5, both trending downward. And then once again, 30-day chart. So if we come down here, we see the PSA 10 sells for 420, a BGS 9.5 goes for 210, and an SGC 10 goes for 225. Now, I think, personally, you could probably do the same thing with BGS 9.5s. Not exactly breaking news there. But in general, I think you get the SGC 10s for a slightly better deal. And your mileage may vary. You could check her out. Maybe you see a BGS 9.5 that's way cheaper than an SGC 10. Gobble that up too. In theory, you could do this with either of the two companies. But I tend to see a wider gap lately with SGC 10s. In the past, SGC 10s sat more directly in between BGS 9.5 and PSA 10. But now that they've drastically closed the gap, I'm going to target the SGC 10s over the BGS 9.5s for a crack and resub purposes. The other thing that you could do, and I mentioned this earlier, is just sit on the SGC 10 slab. And then you're kind of leveraged two ways there, because one, you're just hoping that the market rebounds a little bit and prices go up naturally, so you're into the card for less. And two, you could get a slight double whammy if big if the hobby starts to respect the SGC 10 grade better over the next few months. Could it happen? Sure. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't know. There was a hot minute there back in the summer when SGC 10, like a Zion, for example, was getting close to a PSA pricing. We'll go back and look at the Zion chart in a minute. I'll blow it back. We'll go back further in time. But let's look at one more example really quick just to kind of back up this point. And that's Ja Morant. You can see here, once again, dark blue line is PSA 10. Yellow line is SGC. Pink is BGS. Now, there's this one random SGC sale. I'm calling shenanigans on this. I'm calling bad data on this, that all of a sudden one sold for 450. Maybe someone misclicked. I don't know. But sorry, SGC police. I'm not going to count that when the trend line shows drastically differently. But you could see here, the SGC 10 Ja has dipped well below, on these two sales anyways, what a BGS 9.5 is going for. This is going back a few days, but you could see a BGS 9.5 sold for 286 and an SGC 10 sold for 207. If I could get Ja Morant base Prism SGC 10s for $200, I would buy those all day long. Because you look at the PSA 10, it's selling for over, current day, right around 400. So, I'm not going with this SGC ending average of 450 based off of one random sale. I'm looking at them at more between this 200 and 250 mark, most likely. But once again, that's a big difference. I mean, that's a full 50% less on an SGC 10 slab. And you don't normally see that. You can see this line has drastically came down. Let's go back and look at Zion, and let me go back 90 days. So this will take us to the middle of June. So you can see here, purple line, once again, PSA, yellow line, SGC, blue line, BGS. Typically, and once again, this line spikes a little bit more because of the not weird nature, but because of the, there's just less quantity happening. So it causes higher spikes and lower dips when they happen. But you can see in general, like if you look at the dotted line is the trend line. Let's look at the dotted line here. It basically goes right in between the two. You could see right in the middle, A little weird spike up here when Zion Madness was going on, and then it dipped back down again. But you could see it kind of hovers right in the middle here. Like here's where Zion was near peak, the peak of his powers pricing wise. His base PSA 10 Prism was 880. His SGC 10 was 600, and his BGS 9.5 was 450. So the BGS 9.5 was pulling 50% value, and the SGC 10 was smack dab in the middle. Fast forward to today, and that is no longer the case. The SGC 10s are down near BGS 9.5 pricing. Let's look at Ja. Let's go back 90 days on Ja. See what this shows. Ja got added to the system later But you could see the same thing. Now, his are closer together. So if we look here, when Ja got added, his base prism was 432, his SGC 10 was 250, and his BGS 95 was 204. If we look at peak Ja pricing, let's see. Ja was at about 650, SGC 10 was at about 350, and BGS 95 was at about 270. And then we fast forward here, and now the SGC 10 is basically the same price as a BGS 95, or very close to it, if not less in this case. So, yeah, that's what I got for you guys. I just found this interesting that the SGC 10 prices seem to have taken a slightly harder hit than some of the other graded slabs have of this modern basketball market, at least with these three guys. Like I said, Market Movers doesn't have a ton of SGC data because there's just not a lot of SGC slabs out there still, especially in these common cards. There is more of them, and there's going to be more of them. They're starting the process, get through the orders from May. They're still working on May orders, getting into June. If you followed the channel for a while, I personally, right now, would not recommend sending your cards to SGC, especially modern, ultra modern stuff, should not go to SGC right now. It just should not. Their turnaround times are just as long as PSA, and the value is just not there on their slabs at all. You can see it in the numbers right there. Versus spending the extra $10 per card and sending it to PSA on an economy order. But targeting SGC slabs in sales is an entirely different story. And we've talked about this before. It's been a while. You want to target SGC auctions. SGC auctions consistently sell for under market value compared to best offer and buy it nows. Target SGC auctions of this popular Prism stuff, and I think you can clean up pretty good. For a while, I just had an eBay page that was SGC. The eBay search was SGC 10 auction ending soonest. But I would just keep up on a second monitor. Whenever I was sitting at my computer, I would refresh it and look at any auctions that piqued my interest in like the next 4 hours. I'd flag them as favorites and then see if anything came across as a good deal. I got a steal. This was in the summer. I got a steal on a Ja Morant SGC 10 Prism that I got at auction at the time for like $200, I think. I got it and just held it and sold it on Facebook not even 2 weeks later for $400. Now, part of that was Ja Morant's market kept going up, but also SGC slabs tend to underperform at auction. And if you have SGC cards, you should avoid selling them at auction. So that's what I got for you guys today. Kind of like the little off-season project, kind of a different take on it. We're still going to go through and do some more off-season targets and stuff for guys to buy raw and send in the grading on your own. But while you're looking at raw stuff, look at these SGC 10 slabs. Think of it like they did a raw card review on it. So you're buying like raw plus when you buy an SGC 10 slab, because you know it's already been graded versus, spinning the roulette wheel and hoping that the picture that the person took actually shows the centering correctly and that there's not a light scratch or indent on the surface of the card that doesn't come through on the eBay sale, and then you waste your time and have to do a return or whatever on it. If you buy them already pre-slabbed in SGC 10 with the expectation of cracking and resubbing, yes, you pay a premium on that, but you're most likely getting a pretty good looking card because it got an SGC 10. Like I said before, say what you will about them, but they do grade relatively fair. And I'm not, plenty of people say that, even, non-SGC fanboys will usually say that they grade relatively fair. I know EliteCo 3 does plenty of SGC subs and talks about that they grade very fair along with PSA. So like I said, that's what I got for you guys today. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments, comment, sub, all that nonsense. And we will catch you guys on the next one. Later.